The air is thin and bitter cold on this ridge in the Ardennes. For the crew of the German 88, every breath is a plume of white fog. They've been here for what feels like an eternity, but in reality, it's only been minutes. Their world is a narrow one. The gun sight, the breech, the next shell. The gunnerharns squints. A shape crests the far hill, an American M4 Sherman. He calls the range. The loader slams a shell home. The commander gives the order. Fire. The 88mm gun barks, a sound that splits the sky. A flash of orange on the distant tank, followed by a plume of black smoke. One down, cheers erupt from the gun pit, raw and guttural. Before the smoke clears, another Sherman appears beside the first. The crew works like a well-oiled machine, their movements practiced, precise. Load, aim, fire, a second kill. Then a third. A fourth. They are invincible, the masters of this frozen battlefield. But then, as the cheers die in their throats, they see it. Over the next hill, and the one after that, new columns of American armor appear. Not one or two, but dozens. The dust plumes multiply, a relentless crawling tide of steel. A knot tightens in Hans's stomach. The elation of moments ago evaporates, replaced by a cold, gnawing dread. He looks at his dwindling stack of shells, then back at the horizon. A question hangs unspoken in the frigid air, a question that feels heavier than the gun itself. How can they keep coming? The answer isn't on this battlefield. It's being forged thousands of miles away, in the fiery heart of a nation that has promised to become the arsenal of democracy. Across the Atlantic, in places like Detroit, Michigan, the foundries are beginning to glow day and night. The United States is waking up, and its industrial might is a sleeping giant stirring from its slumber. Here, we meet Lillian. Just a few months ago, she was a homemaker in a quiet Midwestern town. Now, she stands on the floor of the massive Detroit Arsenal tank plant, the air thick with the smell of hot metal and ozone. The scale of the place is overwhelming, a cacophony of hissing welders, clanging hammers, and shouting foremen. She's learning a new language, the language of blueprints, riveting, and welding. Her hands, once soft, are now calloused, but there's a fierce pride in her eyes. Every rivet she fastens, every seam she welds, is a promise sent to men like her brother, fighting somewhere in Europe. This is the core of the conflict, a clash of philosophies. Germany, confident in its technological supremacy, bet on superior weapons and tactical brilliance. Men like Hans, with their deadly 88s, were the embodiment of that strategy. Inflict devastating losses with surgical precision. America, however, was playing a different game. It was a bet on speed, on standardization, and on a scale of production the world had never seen. The M4 Sherman might not be the best tank on the field, but America could build them faster than Germany could destroy them. And so the real war wasn't just being fought in the muddy lanes of France or the deserts of North Africa. It was a brutal, unforgiving race of logistics and attrition. On one side, the tactical genius of the German army trying to make every shot count. On the other, the relentless output of the American factory floor. Survival, for both sides, would come down to a simple, terrifying calculation. Could one side replace its losses faster than the other could inflict them? Back on that frozen ridge, the winter stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. A freight train rumbles in the distance, but it's not for Hans and his crew. That sound is thousands of miles away, carrying crated tank hulls out of Detroit, an endless steel serpent snaking its way toward the coast. Hans finishes his count. They have a handful of shells left. He knows, with a certainty that chills him more than the December wind, that they will not be resupplied tonight, or tomorrow. And on the horizon, the silhouettes of the Shermans are still waiting. The morning whistle screams, a sound that once signaled the start of a day building sedans. Now it's the heartbeat of a different kind of factory. Welcome to the Detroit Arsenal, the beating heart of America's war machine. Men and women stream through the gates, lunch pails in hand, trading their street clothes for coveralls. The assembly line, once a river of chrome and pastel paint, now flows with olive drab steel. This is where M3 South and M4 Shermans are born. At its peak, a new tank rolls off this line roughly every hour. It's a rhythm of relentless, deafening creation. Look there, that's Lillian. A few months ago, she might have been a clerk, a homemaker, or a student. Today she's a master welder. Watch the steady hand, the precise arc of the torch laying a perfect bead of molten steel. She's not alone. Beside her are men who fled the suffocating injustice of the Jim Crow South, seeking not just a wage, but a stake in this fight for freedom. There are women who had never seen the inside of a factory, now operating heavy machinery with practiced ease. This isn't a workforce of seasoned artisans. It's a testament to ingenuity. Intensive training courses, clever jigs that guide every cut and weld, and the miracle of interchangeable parts, these are the tools that transform ordinary people into an extraordinarily productive force. They aren't just building tanks. They're building them faster than anyone thought possible. Thousands of miles away, in a dimly lit command post, German Oberleutnant Hans von Kessler studies the latest intelligence summaries. His superiors are confident. Yankee industry is not unrestricted, one officer mutters, tapping a map. Their supply lines are long. Their workers are soft. They see charts and figures that suggest a ceiling, a limit to American production. But they don't see the reality. They don't see the endless snake of rail cars miles long, groaning under the weight of tanks, ammunition, and spare parts, winding their way toward the ports of the East Coast. They don't see the fleets of hastily built Liberty ships, their cargo holds packed to the brim, braving the U-boat-haunted waters of the Atlantic. Each ship is a floating piece of Detroit, a promise of steel and firepower heading east. The American approach to war isn't just about building new tanks. It's about refusing to let any tank truly die. It's a philosophy of repair and resurrection, a maintenance pyramid built on grit and know-how. On the front lines, a crew might patch a hole in their Sherman's hull with a scavenged piece of steel plate, just enough to get them back in the fight. When a tank takes a hit and is knocked out, it's not the end. Under the cover of darkness, recovery teams with powerful tractors drag the wounded giant back from the battlefield. These crippled machines arrive at field depots, sprawling, muddy workshops where ordnance battalions work miracles. A Sherman with a ruined engine? No problem. A new power pack is hoisted and bolted in. A gun barrel warped by heat? It's swapped out for a replacement. They cannibalize parts from 3 wrecked tanks to make one perfectly functioning one. A tank that was a smoldering wreck on Monday might be back on the front line by Friday, its crew ready for another round. It's a relentless cycle of destruction and rebirth that the enemy simply cannot comprehend. Back in his dugout, Hans gets the morning report. He's confused. His gunner confirmed 2 kills yesterday, 2 Shermans burning fiercely. But reconnaissance reports that both tanks were gone by dawn, dragged away in the night. He's not just fighting the tanks in front of him. He's fighting the phantom army of repaired machines that keep coming back. Back in Detroit, the noise of the factory floor fades into a focused hum for Lillian. She steps back, wiping a smear of grease from her forehead. The final weld is complete. The massive steel hull of another Sherman tank is finished. With a piece of chalk, she reaches out and scrawls her initials, LS, onto the cold steel, a small personal mark on this colossal instrument of war. She smiles, a quiet moment of pride in a job well done. She has no idea where it's going. She can't imagine this very piece of steel, born of fire and sweat in the heart of America, will soon be navigating the treacherous hedgerows of Normandy, an ocean and a continent away, carrying its own crew into history. The lane is a green tunnel, a suffocating corridor of earth and leaves. This is the bocage, the hedgerow country of Normandy, and for Hans it is a fortress and a cage. Through the powerful optics of his Panther's gun sight, the world is a narrow circle of crosshairs. In that circle, a Sherman tank noses forward, a steel beast sniffing the air. Behind it, ghosts in olive-drab American infantry move cautiously along the road. The tension is a physical thing, a coiling snake in his gut. His training screams patience. Wait for the perfect shot. Wait for the killing zone. This is the clash of titans, a brutal argument of steel and fire. The German doctrine is one of precision and lethality. The Panther, with its sloped armor and devastating long-barreled 75mm gun, is a predator. The lurking 88s are patient assassins. They are designed to kill from a distance, to strike once and fatally. But the Americans, they don't fight like that. They fight like a flood. Artillery walks ahead of their advance, a rolling barrage that chews the earth and shatters nerves. Above, the constant drone of Jabos fighter-bomber circles like birds of prey, ready to dive on any sign of movement. Tank destroyers, sleek and deadly, cover the flanks, their guns pointed into the dense green walls, hunting for hunters like him. And then there's the Sherman. Hans has seen what his gun does to them. He's seen them brew up, erupting in flame, earning them the grim nickname Ronson from their own crews. Its armor feels paper-thin against his shells, its standard 75mm gun often bouncing harmlessly off his Panther's glacis plate. It's an inferior machine, he thinks. But that's not the whole story. For every Sherman that burns, two more seem to take its place. American crews, though wary of their tank's weaknesses, also praise its strengths. It's mechanically reliable. It doesn't break down in the middle of a fight. Its radio, unlike the often fussy German sets, actually works, allowing for coordination that feels almost telepathic. It's maneuverable, able to pivot and reposition in ways his heavier Panther cannot, and it can be repaired. A knocked-out tank one day is back on the line the next. Innovation spread through the American ranks with bewildering speed. Mid-campaign, newer Shermans arrive with wet ammunition racks, the shells surrounded by a water glycol mixture. Suddenly, they don't burn so easily. Then, a sergeant has an idea. He welds steel tusks from German beach obstacles onto the front of his tank. The rhinoceros is born, and soon, entire companies are fitting these hedgerow cutters, tearing through the ancient earthen walls that were supposed to be impenetrable fortresses. The bocage is no longer a shield. Miles away, another part of this relentless machine grinds on. Lillian's brother is part of it. He's a driver on the Red Ball Express, a ghost on the night roads of France. He's part of a vast non-stop convoy, mostly African-American soldiers, driving trucks day and night. Their headlights are hooded slits, their tires humming a constant song on the asphalt. They haul the lifeblood of the advance. Gasoline, ammunition, rations, spare parts. They are the artery, pumping supplies directly to the heart of the battle, ensuring the flood never stops. The front line is a hungry beast, and they are its tireless feeders. In the captured diary of a German battalion commander, a single, weary line captures the feeling. The enemy's materiel seems to be inexhaustible. Hans feels this in his bones. He sees the evidence every single day. A Sherman he personally disabled, its hull blackened and scarred, reappears 3 days later. The scorch marks are still there, but the track is repaired, the gun is new, and a fresh-faced crew looks out from its hatches. He fights ghosts. He kills tanks that refuse to stay dead. A cold, cruel arithmetic begins to settle over him, as relentless as the American artillery. He can be the perfect gunner. His crew can be the perfect team. They can achieve a flawless 10-to-1 kill ratio. They can fight with unmatched skill and courage. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many you destroy if the stream never, ever stops. For everyone he kills, there are 10 more waiting. The logic is inescapable, a mathematical certainty of defeat. And with that realization, the green tunnel of the bocage feels less like a fortress and more like a tomb. The summer of 1944 was a furnace. After the bloody hedgerow fighting, Operation Cobra ripped open the German front in Normandy. For the American GIs, it was a world of choking dust, shimmering heat, and the constant earth-shaking roar of their own artillery. The advance was relentless, a mechanized flood pouring through the breach. But the German army wasn't broken yet. At Mortain, they launched a desperate counterattack, a mailed fist aimed at cutting off Patton's spearheads. It was a brutal clash, but the tide had turned. Swarms of American fighter bombers, the dreaded Jabos, swooped down like hawks, their rockets and cannons tearing into the packed Panzer formations. On the ground, American armor, now more experienced and numerous, slammed the counterattack to a halt. The German gamble had failed. As autumn bled into winter, a chilling quiet fell over the front. Then, in the pre-dawn darkness of a December morning, the Ardennes forest erupted. Operation Watch on the Rhine. The Battle of the Bulge had begun. Snow blanketed the landscape, muffling the sound of engines as elite German units surged forward. Imagine Hans, a young Panzer crewman, perched on the cold steel of a Panther tank. His unit is powerful, but their fuel gauges are already dipping toward empty. Their entire offensive is a desperate bet, a gamble on capturing American fuel depots to keep the advance going. It's a high-stakes roll of the dice, a symbol of Germany's precarious situation. Even as they field some of the most formidable tanks of the war, the industrial heartland that builds them is being systematically pulverized from the air. Raw materials are scarce, transportation is a shambles, and every lost vehicle is harder to replace. Contrast this with the American reality. Behind the front lines, a massive grinding logistical machine is in constant motion. New tanks and trucks are being unloaded at the newly captured port of Antwerp. A vast network of supply depots, pushed as far forward as possible, ensures that fuel, ammunition, and food keep flowing. The famed Red Ball Express has given way to new routes, but the same spirit of relentless supply continues, with trucks plowing through icy, treacherous roads day and night. Wrecked vehicles aren't just abandoned. They're cannibalized for parts, with mechanics working in freezing conditions to turn 3 wrecks into one functioning machine. This is the American advantage. Not just quality, but an overwhelming, seemingly infinite quantity. It's an industrial avalanche that Germany simply cannot hope to match. For Hans and his comrades, the first few days are a whirlwind of shocking success. They overrun unprepared American positions, their heavy Panthers and King Tigers knocking out Shermans with contemptuous ease. Burning American tanks and trucks litter the snowy roadsides. For a fleeting moment, it feels like 1940 all over again, a return to the glory days of the Blitzkrieg. But victory is temporary. The promised fuel trucks never arrive. The advance stalls. And then the weather breaks. The low clouds that had grounded Allied air power part, revealing a clear, cold blue sky. It's a death sentence. The Jabos return, filling the air with the drone of their engines. P-47 Thunderbolts and P-51 Mustangs dive, their machine guns strafing anything that moves. And with the clear skies comes the thunder of American artillery, now fully resupplied and zeroed in, unleashing a storm of high explosives that shatters the German columns. The human cost is immense, and it's felt on both sides. Hans shivers in his tank, his hands raw and frostbitten, watching his army's last great hope freeze and die. Back in England, a woman named Lillian, a volunteer, reads a letter from the front. The words are terse, clinical. A friend's tank crew, boys she'd danced with just months before, did not make it out. The sheer number of American tanks doesn't erase the individual grief. Each loss is a universe of pain, a stark reminder that even in a war of materiel, the price is paid in flesh and blood. The American doctrine of using overwhelming firepower and numbers to save lives worked, but it couldn't save everyone. The cost of victory was still measured in personal tragedy, in letters home that delivered the worst possible news. The Bulge collapses. The German offensive, which began with such force, is broken and hurled back. For Hans, what's left of his unit is in full retreat. He stands by a roadside, his once mighty Panther now a disabled, useless hunk of steel. He watches the American response, and it's a sight that extinguishes the last embers of hope. It's not just a column of tanks. It's an iron river. An endless procession of Shermans, tank destroyers, and self-propelled guns, all freshly painted, fully fueled and crewed by determined soldiers, grind steadily east. They rumble past him, their tracks churning the muddy snow, their destination clear, the heart of Germany. It is a torrent of steel, a physical manifestation of industrial power that signals the inevitable end. The war wasn't over yet, but standing there, watching that unstoppable flow of American armor, Hans knows the final outcome is no longer in doubt. The final push across the Rhine. There wasn't a single dramatic charge, but a relentless, grinding advance. Overnight, pontoon bridges bloomed across the river, engineering marvels that symbolized the American way of war. By March 1945, a few of the new, powerful M26 Pershing tanks started to appear, finally a direct match for the German Panther. But the Pershing wasn't the secret weapon. The real American advantage was something much bigger, something systemic. Imagine this. Throughout the war, American factories churned out over 88,000 tanks. On top of that, tens of thousands of self-propelled guns, tank destroyers, and armored recovery vehicles. And behind them, an endless ocean of spare parts, fuel, and ammunition, all flowing across the Atlantic. It was a symphony of production, a logistical masterpiece that the Axis powers simply couldn't comprehend, let alone counter. Germany's late-war efforts were impressive but futile. They built the fearsome Tiger II, a steel monster that could dominate the battlefield. But they only managed to produce a few hundred. Their Panthers were formidable, but they were complex, resource-intensive, and often sat idle, immobilized by a lack of fuel or a simple mechanical failure. As Allied bombers systematically shattered Germany's railways and factories, the lifeline for these steel beasts was severed. They were titans stranded on a dying island. We can imagine a captured German tanker, let's call him Hans, sitting in a POW camp, utterly exhausted. He's not just defeated, he's bewildered. He saw Shermans knocked out, only to see them were tanks just like them. Back in the fight days later, he would later admit a grudging respect. The Americans, he realized, didn't just build tanks. They built the entire system to transport them, fuel them, fix them, and crew them, seemingly without end. They had built an unstoppable tide of steel. Meanwhile, back in the States, Lillian stands on a factory floor. It's VE Day. The deafening roar of machinery has finally fallen silent, replaced by cheers and music. Red, white, and blue bunting hangs from the rafters where tank hulls once swung from cranes. It's a moment of overwhelming joy and relief, but it's tinged with sadness. As the celebrations swirl around her, she quietly remembers the names of boys from her town. Boys who worked these lines before they went overseas, names that won't be coming home. Each tank they built was a promise, and for many, a sacrifice. This brings us to a crucial point, a myth we need to clarify. The M4 Sherman was not the best tank of the war, not by a long shot. It wasn't invincible, but it didn't have to be. Its strength was its reliability and the sheer numbers it was produced in. It was simple enough to be mass-produced and critically easy to repair in the field. Many Shermans that German reports marked as destroyed were simply recovered, patched up by dedicated maintenance crews and sent right back into the fray, sometimes within hours. This constant replenishment compounded German frustration and wore down their elite, but brittle, armored forces. The Sherman's true power was multiplied by the artillery, air support, and infantry that always accompanied it. It was the ultimate team player in a combined arms doctrine that valued organized abundance over individual prowess. The story of the American tank in Europe is more than a tale of steel and firepower. It's a lesson in strategy. Tactics, brilliant commanders, and brave soldiers win battles. But logistics, production, and organized industrial might win long wars. It is the story of how victory was forged not just on the bloody ridgelines of France and Germany, but on the humming assembly lines of Detroit and Cleveland, by men and women like Lillian. The war was won by the spreadsheet as much as by the sword. If you enjoy these deep dives into the untold stories of World War II, exploring how wars are truly won on both the battlefield and the home front, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We have so much more to uncover together. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.